Hello, welcome to another episode of Connect First. I'm your host, Command Sergeant Major Shawn Carns, the First Corps Command Sergeant Major, and today we're going to talk about suicide awareness. And I have two great guests here to help us get after our topic of suicide awareness today. Please introduce yourself and what you do in the Corps.
Yeah, Sergeant Major, thanks for having me. Chaplain Grady Pennell. I'm the HHBN chaplain for First Corps, so just kind of take care of all the different directorates and staff and all the soldiers that help First Corps run and make our mission happen on a daily basis. So,
awesome.
Cool.
Sergeant Major.
Good afternoon. I'm Sergeant Major Dina Pang. I work in the First Corps Surgeon Cell, and basically we have oversight of everything within the Corps in terms of medical readiness, H2F, and everything related to medical.
Awesome. And two great experts to help have a great discussion about suicide awareness. Obviously, this is Suicide Awareness Month, so it's an awesome topic to talk about and for us to get after, right? And I'd kind of like it to open up and, for all of us to initially start discussing as we talk about suicide awareness. And I kind of look at it in two little pieces. I mean, there's a lot of pieces to it, but you have an individual and then you have a team, right? Where, individual, what some of the things that individual resiliency and what some of the things that you've seen or have done to help out with individual resiliency, and then also team engagement. I know we say leadership engagement, but I believe it's a team engagement piece of it, not just a leadership engagement. The team has to be engaged to help each other out, to get after, as we talk about, suicide prevention.
Yeah, I would really agree with you on that. Like, just thinking about my conversations with leaders within the Army and just soldiers, like there is that individual aspect of like, what do you do individually to get yourself, ready or resilient, or make yourself more resilient? As far as, as a chaplain, I'm always looking through a spiritual lens, and how each soldier's spirituality is different. So how do I help each one of those soldiers individually have what they need to be able to practice, their faith, and that if I can't perform what they need, that I find somebody else to provide it. And then that team aspect too. It's like trusted teams, and we were actually talking about it before when we came in here, just that vulnerability aspect of like a team, and when you're vulnerable as a leader, what that does for your team. It creates trust. And we were actually talking about the book Daring Greatly, and Dr. Brene Brown talks about just, shame prevents us from being vulnerable, and really people think, well, I have to trust you before I'm vulnerable with somebody, but it's actually the inverse, that you're vulnerable and then trust is built in. You have trusted teams. And so it's like, if I share a little bit of like, and show that I'm human to my team, that creates a connection, which prevents, some of those negative things that happen within the team or the chemistry. And so just looking for ways to help those teams connect, whether it's a workout at H2F or a chaplaincy resiliency event, or, whatever. But yeah, I've never heard it put that way, like individual and team. So
Yeah. So you said a key word is vulnerable, and I never really used that word, but you're exactly right. I use probably humble. All right, vulnerable, humble.
Yeah.
When you're vulnerable and humble, you open yourself up, and you're more authentic to somebody. And somebody can feel that, right? Because there's some feelings in there when you talk about being vulnerable.
Yes.
And being humble, there's feelings in there. And when you're vulnerable, you're humble, you open yourself up, and then you become authentic to yourself. And I agree with you. Being vulnerable and being humble helps build the trust. It's not that I need to trust you first, but me being vulnerable, me being humble to you is opening myself up. That's building trust.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a very powerful word.
And they have
vulnerable.
to kind of see that you're human, right? Because I think a lot of the times they see, all the chevrons and they see all the bars of rank, and you seem so far removed. And then they think, oh, well, they got their stuff together, right? Because they're supposed to be well-rounded. The Army says you have to do all these things to get up to that level. So oftentimes they think you're so far removed they can't approach you. And if they feel like, hey, that person is a human just like I am, and I can talk to them, because what we often do is we want to say, you know, we're American soldiers, we're built to do certain things, we're trained to do certain things, but they don't see us as, oh, okay, well, I at one point was Specialist Pang. You know, Specialist Pang had to go through all of these things, and I still, even as Sergeant Major Pang, I have a rough time waking up on a Tuesday morning after a 4-day weekend, and I had to like shift gears to think Army. They don't realize that. They just think, oh, Sergeant Major's been in the Army so long, she always acts like that. She doesn't realize that Sergeant Major still acts the way you do. It's just that we have a persona to kind of to portray. So I think for me, you know, as for my own individuality and to be able to have healthy outlets, I always ensure that I kind of take like breaks, you know, like whether it's like a mental health break or a resiliency break. I know we have many kind of catchphrases for a lot of things, because it could be a very, very busy day. And I will tell my soldiers, like, hey, I've had all these meetings and I've got to go take a break. So I think when you show that you had to take a break, they will also do that, right? So, and I will deliberately say, I'm going to go get lunch. Did you eat lunch? Right? Because oftentimes, what do we do in the Army? Work right through lunch,
walking,
right?
yeah.
Right, we got some mission in the evening, so maybe we'll skip dinner. But you have to say, like, hey, like, did you eat? Did you do something? Did you go just take a breather? Right? Because if they think you're always working and you're running from one thing to another, they think they themselves have to do the same thing, right? And then honestly, and then the break doesn't have to be I step away completely. Like, a break could just be like, hey, let's all just get together real quick and talk, right? Like what have you been up to? How was the weekend? You know, what's some cool stuff that's coming up? Because oftentimes we always talk about work that it becomes like, oh, do people have time to take a healthy outlet?
So one thing I want to hit on, not the break piece, but the piece you said about being, you know, an open door and people feeling comfortable to come talk to you, right? So what are some of the things that you've all done? Obviously you as a chaplain and you as a sergeant major, but working your way up through the leadership ranks, that you made it feel comfortable. How did you make people feel comfortable to come see you? Because, you know, as we say, there's a stigma to go see behavioral health.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want a stigma for them to come see us or come see you or come see you. Yeah. What are some of the things that you've done in your careers to make sure it was, hey, comfortable for them to come see you, and you had that open door policy?
Yeah, I think it comes back to what you're talking about, Sergeant Major, just like that humility. And we were talking about it even before this started, but a lot of times when I'm doing a chaplain event and we're talking about, you know, suicide prevention or mental health, you know, I'll talk to them and I'll just be like, hey, you know, I see a counselor every 2 weeks. And everyone's just kind of like, whoa, like, are you okay, chaplain? And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing great, actually. And if I'm going to take care of your soul, I need to take care of mine to be able to provide that and to model it. And there is a stigma, you know, definitely attached to that, and trying to break that down. But I think, you know, approachability, and maybe you can put some more meat to it, Sergeant Major, but I'm thinking, like, what does that entail, you know, like putting meat to it? Because I'm like, you know it when you see it. Like, you're just like, oh yeah, that person's really approachable. And you might have only had maybe a 30 or 40 second interaction with them, but you're like, oh no, I feel like I can really go up and talk to that person. And I think it comes back to that humility, but then also modeling what you're asking people to do, you know, and then just being really honest about where you haven't done well too. Like, hey, this is where I failed. You know, I didn't have all the right answers. Like if you think my life is really squeaky clean and perfect as a chaplain, that could be further from the truth. You know, like as far as my faith tradition informs me, like I'm just as much in need of God's grace today as I was yesterday and the days moving forward. And so it's like, if I'm not anchoring myself in that grace and that relationship with God every day, like, you know, I'm just, you know, just because I wear a cross doesn't mean I'm any different than the soldiers I minister to. I just had to go get a different degree, you know, but, and I think just modeling that is just, you know, I think it comes, with that humility aspect. But I don't know, maybe you agree with me. I don't know. Like you just see it when you know somebody's approachable. Like but I don't know
I think
what
you
goes
have to kind
into
of
it.
go to them, right? So half the time, honestly, soldiers don't even know where you're going to be at, right? So, but however, we have training schedules.
Yeah.
We have troop to task. So as leaders, or as in charge of something, you could say, hey, I'm looking at not just my calendar, but let's look at the whole training calendar, and let's look at the whole entire troop to task. So being medical, oftentimes I'll just go to someone that's pulling medical coverage or somebody that's working in the clinic. So you kind of make it kind of part of your battle rhythm, right? So the battle rhythm isn't just battle rhythm items related to training or meetings, right? It could be, hey, I have battle rhythm items where I'm checking on the troops because I have the troop to task, I have the training schedule, and I don't have to announce that I am coming because when you announce that you're coming, it comes a dog and pony show. But the soldier that's doing medical coverage, oftentimes it's just that one soldier or that two soldiers in a FLA, and they're sitting there by themselves, but you know exactly where it is. So it doesn't hurt for you to just go up there and say, hey, how's clinic today? How's medical coverage today? And oftentimes it could be completely uneventful. And a lot of times you can just talk to them about their lives versus the medical coverage, or maybe there could be something that's happening for that mission or whatever task that they're covering down, and you might be like, oh, what do you mean you don't have this or you don't have that? Oh, let me get to it. Oh, you have an appointment you have to get to. Let me see, but maybe you can get a replacement so you can just go to that appointment really quickly. I think a lot of times if you just get out of your office, get out of your meetings, and I've told my bosses that before too, like they'll say, hey, we got all these meetings. I'd be like, this one meeting right here, do you mind if maybe we do split ops? You go to it and I go to this training event that's coming up because, I can go and see what's going on with the troops. So.
Oh, yeah. And as we talk about the team engagement piece of it, right, and what you're kind of talking about and you alluded to in the suicide piece of it is that team engagement, building relationships with your personnel, right? And it just might not be your squad.
Roger.
But it could be, the bigger organization, right?
Yeah.
Just getting out and building relationships with people. And when we're vulnerable, we build that personal relationship with them. Because then we stop talking with the brain and we start talking with the heart.
Yeah.
And this is being authentic, and this is being yourself when you're able to speak from the heart and be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And like I said, people see that, soldiers see that, leaders see that, and that opens them up. But that's where building relationships is huge to understand a person. So, again, you build a relationship with somebody, asking them simple questions. Hey, how's your family doing, right?
Yeah.
How's your brother and sisters doing, right? Hey, I know you like playing video games. Hey, what video game did you play last night, right? With your friends and things like that.
Yeah.
To getting to understand them, because then you'll be able to notice little troubles that they might be having when you start talking to them. You can tell them little mood swings or the body language or the way they're talking that will help you sense, hey, everything okay? Everything good today? And when they say, yeah, everything's fine, well, how's everything fine, right? Dig a little bit deeper. Don't just go with that first sentence, yeah, everything's fine.
Yeah.
When you know everything's not fine, hey, or tell me a little bit about what's fine about it, right?
Yeah.
So you dig a little bit deeper to help, to maybe to bring out that something that's troubling them, and then how do me as a leader take care of that?
Yeah.
And if they've seen you all the time, they will open up to
Yep.
you. But however, if it's the first time they've seen you,
Yeah.
and other than your command picture, they're probably not going to tell you. They're probably not going to tell you what's going on.
Agreed.
Yeah. And I think most of our junior soldiers too can tell very quickly how genuine you are if you're just asking those questions to check a block, or if you really are genuinely concerned and just want to know. And I think part of that comes vulnerability, but empathy too, being able to kind of place yourself in their lane and be able to look back at like, oh yeah, I remember being here or doing that, and just feeling with them and sitting with them in that. A lot of times too, as a chaplain, I'm not asking very many questions in counseling sessions. I'm just sitting there kind of absorbing and allowing them to come. There could be a 55-minute session where I come and I ask, hey, how's your day? and I don't talk for the next 50 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then they'll be like, oh, thanks, Chaplain, this was really great. You know, like, well, I didn't really do much, but you're welcome, you know, like, please come back anytime. And so just being able to absorb that and hear it and asking, you know, paraphrasing questions back and just like, so what do you mean by that? Or like, what's going on? But it comes from a genuine care for those that you lead, that you see them as people that are entrusted to your care. And I think one of the things that was really helpful for me, because I've got 3 kids, I've got an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old, and my middle son, you know, he wants to be a helicopter pilot in the Army. He sees helicopters going over all the time, and I'm like, you know, that he's one of America's sons and daughters, and we're entrusted to take care of them. And like, what kind of care do I want for my kids if they were to join the Army?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm going to want a leader that stops by their work just to ask to see how their day is going on, like make sure that they have great living conditions, or, you know, really want to know what's going on with them. And I feel like I've been really blessed to have really good leaders in the Army model that, of like taking the time out of the day, that really people, you know, especially for the Chaplain Corps in the Army, like people are the main priority. Mm-hmm. But, you know, also what comes along with that is community. And so for the Chaplain Corps, there's a really big push for people, you know, in line with the Army's objectives, but also cultivating community. And the way you do that is going out, being seen, being vulnerable, being honest, creating connection points with soldiers, and then hopefully that provides some protective barrier, kind of like the DOD's. I've actually got, my XO gave me shoelaces that say connect to protect. So I've already got my shoes laced up for tomorrow. So if you're watching this, Major Barnes, I'm ready to go for the ruck tomorrow. But like, you know, that community, you know, valuing people and valuing community, that provides that connect to protect, that provides that connection of connecting people to a community, something greater than themselves, so they have, you know, that they're able to feel that sense of meaning and belonging, and hopefully have some preventative measures in place, you know, when those really tough, dark days do come for them. And so just placing a value on those and finding creative ways to get at that is part of what I enjoy about the Chaplain Corps. Like, how are we going to create more community for soldiers? So anyway.
Yeah. And you said a lot in there which was very valuable. If we broke everything down that you just said, we'd be here for days, because all that stuff that you just said was very important. I do want to take one piece of that, and the communication piece, right? And as we talk this active listening, and I always say you got to go above active listening, right? You got to hear what they're saying. And you said a very good point. You just sit there and listen, right? Because we are bad about communications. We hear to reply, or we don't listen to understand and be curious and ask questions. Instead, we're ready to reply with something, right? So you got to listen, not just listen, but you got to hear what they're saying to be able to break that down. Again, let them speak, let them talk. Listen and hear what they're saying. Then you pick out pieces to be able to go off and be curious and ask questions as you're talking about, because I want them to speak more than I'm speaking.
Yes. Yeah.
So, you know, see different kinds of things they're saying, hear what they're saying, and then ask questions off that. I think is very important. And we've, you know, through years in the military, have learned a little bit to this. Obviously, we can get, you know, better practice at that every single day.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
For sure.
And then, you know, another piece that you said was the community. Wow. Yeah, that's huge, right? Is just not individual, just not team, but it's a community effort. And I agree with that. You know, as we talk about in the Army, people first. Here at First Corps, we mean people first. Like when I go to the newcomers brief, that's the first thing I talk about. And that's probably the only thing I talk about. Because we are about taking care of our people, right? Just, you know, as people say, hey, I have your back. No, I don't have your back. I'm going to walk right beside each and every one of you and hold your hand through anything you go through. That's caring for people, right? Take them to, you know, to their medical appointment. Take them over there as a leader.
Yeah.
Make sure they go over there and then stay in there with them to find out what's going on. Because guess what? He or she is coming back to your care. Yep, they get the medical care, but guess what? I got to continue to make sure that I'm taking care of him or her, while they're in my care at the unit, right? So we got to make sure that we just don't on their back, but we're walking right beside them and holding their hand through whatever they go through.
And let's not forget their families, right? So oftentimes we're really good about taking care of the soldiers, but the soldiers, we have a schedule. I have to be at PT, I have to come to work, I got work call, I got afternoon formation, evening formation, close out. But then you got to realize that within their families, sometimes the kids go to school, but sometimes the spouses, especially as we transition, right? Because the Army PCS is a lot, right? So every time the family moves, right, the soldier has something to do, but it's like, oh, what are we doing about their families? Because they got to get integrated in school. We got to make sure they move into the right neighborhood. Yep. They might not even know what's the right neighborhood or what's the good school district to go to. Are we giving them resources so their spouses can have a job? Because not oftentimes are they able to transfer their jobs, and people's jobs are a huge factor in their lives. And if you don't have all of those things in place, it makes it's a lot of stress on the soldier because the family has to transition. So, and then after that, taking care of their family, then does the family feel like they're part of a community, like you said that, right? Because it all depends on where they live at and what school district they're in, And not oftentimes are they going to come all the way back if they don't live in housing. If they live off post. So it's a huge difference if you live in Lakewood versus DuPont, or if you live on post. So it's how we integrating their families, and how we're making that family feel like they're part of the Army.
And you said a good word, and there's stress, right? There's good stress and bad stress. And so, and in chaplain, you can definitely comment on this because you probably all talk about good stress and bad stress a lot. But, it's just not the individual, but then it's also the team to understand, hey, what stress am I putting on that individual, and understand that, right, to where, hey, I don't want to break him or her, but I want to help him or her get stronger. Yep. So, I'll let you talk a little bit about stress because you probably talk about it quite often.
Yeah, I mean, there are, the difference between good stress and bad stress, to me personally, it can be a razor thin line sometimes too, of like, hey, am I pushing this person too far? Usually it's like, I find that line, like physical fitness, but there is something to be said to just the stress level. And I think kind of dovetailing what you're talking about, Sergeant Major, just in regards to families, when you get to know a soldier's family, you get to know the stress level that they're under. You get to know a little bit more of like, well, I thought I knew you just in a work environment, but now that I know, like, oh man, like this is a E2 with 4 kids, like, they're having a really tough time. Like how can I help, or they might have just some extenuating family circumstances that you never knew about. And as you get to know them, and as a chaplain, I find myself like, hey, this person is under a lot of stress, and I want to advocate for them to be like, hey, I'm not asking them to get out of work or anything like that, but how are some ways that we can support them through the FRG channels, or just because the family piece can be one of the greatest pieces of connection and protection for soldiers as far as stress and suicidal ideation and those things, but it can also be a catalyst for that to happen too, because if the family's not healthy, if those relationships are not healthy, I'm sure each of us can talk with great pain in our voices about soldiers we know because of their family situation led to them making really just really difficult decisions and really painful decisions. And so understanding that stress, how it impacts the family, how it impacts the soldiers at work is really important. And then I think coming back to kind of at the beginning of the conversation, like, what do you do personally? And so a lot of times I help soldiers manage that stress through different techniques, whether that's, deep breathing that, we learn at MRT, or the big thing that I push for a lot of times, and we were talking about it before, was journaling. And that's a huge, one of the books I read this past year, Healthy Me, Healthy Us by John and Leslie Parrott. There's been all kinds of scientific connection, specifically with stress management, that if you journal for 20 minutes, that journaling out that feeling on paper that connection between hand and mind and paper. There's something very therapeutic about it, and it allows to process out the stress, the anxiety, whatever that is. And I've seen a lot of soldiers like, I don't keep a diary, chaplain. And I'm like, well, just try this for 8 days. Each day, 20 minutes at the end of your day, and they'll come back and it's like, I've been journaling the last 6 months. Okay, all right, great. Keep it up. So.
And journaling isn't necessarily a diary.
Yes,
I journal.
Yes, yep, for sure.
Right,
yeah.
And it works.
Yes,
it works.
Yeah.
Like, if I have a bad day or even if I have a good day, whatever it is, when I put that information on that paper, it's out of here and it's on there. And it relaxes me and I'm able to go to sleep better. It works every time. But, whatever I'm thinking about, I just write. Whatever's in my mind, maybe what happened during the day, whatever it is, I just start writing to get it out of here and put it on the paper, and it works. It gets it out of my mind. And you said about stress, but I look at it too as everyone has a bad day. Everyone has a bad day, no doubt in my mind about it, right?
Yeah.
But we've got to hunt for the good stuff, right? Guaranteed, somewhere in the day, something bad went, but there was other things that were good too.
Yes.
Perfect example is maybe I'm driving home, had a bad day, whatever it was. I got yelled at, whatever it was, right? I'm driving home and I go through every single green light the whole way home. That's something good, right? And can put a little smile on your face. Hey, I just went through every single green light the whole way home. This is awesome. Yeah. We've got to also hunt for that good stuff. Guaranteed you have a bad day, but it was because of one moment that caused you to have the bad day that you kept lingering on.
Yeah.
Hey, let's hunt for the good stuff and what are some of the good stuff that happened to get that bad stuff out of your mind.
Yeah.
Then going home or even going back to your room after you have that and just get it on paper and get it out of your mind and put it on paper.
Yeah. No, we do in my household at the end of the day we do like family devotions, and so we'll ask the kids, what are you grateful for today? Or we'll ask them, what is your rose? And the rose is like, what's the best part of your day? And then like the thorn, like what was the kind of crappy part of your day? And then like, what's the bud? Like, what are you looking forward to? But we also have a saying in the Pennell household, bad day, not a bad life. And I think I have to use that, for me more than, it's like, hey, that was just, because it is, you can get wrapped up in that moment of just like, man, that was a really bad, and then that defines the rest of your day, and it's like,
well, it's kind of contagious too, right?
It is.
So if someone's pessimistic or negative, and then it kind of could spread to the whole section or family members. So it's like, if you don't look at it positively, right? So sometimes you have to be that light, right? So you have to be that person that, hey, we went through this today, team. It was pretty awful, but let's recap, right? What did we accomplish? Did we grow? Because we have to kind of set that tone. And if you look for the positivity and stuff, then others will look for the positivity. But we've all been in section or teams where one person says something negative, then somebody else throws something, and then there's this horrible spiral that next we're all drowning in negativity. It takes that one person to be like, hey, wait a minute, guys, like let's look at the stuff that we did accomplish, let's look at the light, at the end of the tunnel, because we have to kind of look at it, because it is very easy to kind of join in on the negativity. And it's also just as easy as if someone starts being positive and optimistic for it to turn. To basically,
Amen. So I appreciate both of you coming on, Connect First, and talking about suicide awareness and giving your knowledge from both your backgrounds to help our audience, our soldiers, our leaders, everyone who watches this, family members, people out in the community, to be able to help them be better people and also to, help suicide prevention. So I'll open up to you for either one of you for any closing comments.
Oh, nothing other than I appreciate you inviting us over. It was great meeting you, Chaplain. It was a wonderful discussion.
Cool.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Sergeant Major. This has been really awesome and been. I was a little bit nervous, and this has been really great. It really just awesome to hear your heart today, and taking care of soldiers. So yeah, thanks so much.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you very much again for coming on. Audience, thank you very much for tuning in to another episode of Connect First. Be positive, be optimistic, and have a great day. Thank you very much.
Cool.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to Connect First podcast, where we discuss leadership at its core. You can find Connect First on all your major podcast streaming platforms. Follow First Corps on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for information on upcoming episodes, as well as all things First Corps. Rate, review, and subscribe to us on YouTube and click that notification bell so you'll know exactly when we drop a new episode. Until next time.